Hello YouTube. I'm here to discuss why Jordan Peterson is a grifter and why he's always wrong. Before you click off, and before you write your angry comments, just hear me out. Because I don't think that Jordan Peterson being a grifter and wrong means that you're wrong or that you're stupid. I just think he's been hoodwinking a lot of people. And since he has his new book coming out soon, and he got some notoriety again, I want to go through some of his past statements and why he is wrong. Let's get started, shall we? So, Jordan Peterson is a Canadian psychologist that became popular in 2016 because he criticized a Canadian Human Rights Act called Bill C-16, which was passed by Parliament in Canada to introduce gender identity and expression as prohibited grounds for discrimination. So he wrongly claimed that you would get, you'd have to go to court if you accidentally misgender someone, which was not the case. This law was specifically made so that so that it is discrimination if you purposefully misgender someone. If you go out of your way at your place of work, for example, to misgender someone, that's discrimination. That was what it was about. He misrepresented the point, and he became very popular as kind of a anti-SJW type figure. And then he released a book in 2018 called 12 Rules for Life, an Antidote for Chaos. And that book is basically a self-help book with very heavy Christian, Judeo-Christian undertones. And in it, he basically gives you 12 kind of steps to make your life better and give more meaning to your life. Clean your room, wear pants, all that kind of stuff. I'm, of course, being super simplistic on his book. He is, as I mentioned, a clinical psychologist and a professor of psychology. And he doesn't write about psychology, really. Or his book, 12 Rules for Life, is not about psychology per se. It's more about philosophy. And this is a very common theme that we see in right-wing pundits like him, where they have a academic background, but in something else than what they do. Like Sam Harris. Sam Harris is a neuroscientist, I believe. But that's not what he talks about. He talks about, politics and philosophy as well, which are not his expertises. And Jordan Peterson's big point is order versus chaos. It's kind of the big thing that he touts. You have to have order, otherwise the dragon of chaos will eat you and everything you love. That's a very bad Jordan Peterson impression. But yeah, his big thing is order versus chaos, and then he sees postmodern neo-Marxism as the big evil. But postmodern Marxism in and of itself is a contradictory term, because postmodernism is a movement that is a reaction to modernism, and modernism was a philosophical movement that aimed to explain things in the world with broad-reaching terms. Basically trying to find theories that would explain everything. Marxism can be seen as a modernist theory because Marxism puts everything in the lens of class struggle. So postmodernism was a reaction to this, saying, no, we cannot use single theories to explain everything. It doesn't work. So now you can see why postmodernism and Marxism are at odds, because Marxism aims to explain everything through the lens of class struggle, and postmodernism says, no, you can't do that because it's more complex than that. So these are some of the things where he's been best known. So he's been on multitude of big podcast shows like Joe Rogan. He's been on, I think, Rubin Report, talk with Ben Shapiro, all these right-wing media pundits he's been very heavily involved with. In the last few years, however, or in the last year or so, he's kind of disappeared in something like it's been really unclear what's been going on in his life. He adopted an all-meat diet based on, I believe, his daughter's recommendation. And then during the last year or so, he's kind of been like completely off the radar. It's been kind of really weird what's been going on in his life. But then he announced, or it was announced that he is writing a new book called Beyond Order, 12 More Rules for Life, which should be coming out in March next year. So I want to take this opportunity now to go through some of the stuff that Jordan Peterson has said in the past and kind of show you why you shouldn't listen to him. You really shouldn't listen to him. He is definitely wrong about a lot of stuff. Now, this isn't to say that self-help can't be good. Self-help can be good. You know, you can get some useful techniques and tools for your life from self-help stuff. But the problem with self-help as an industry is that it kind of pushes systemic issues on individuals to fix themselves, where that is not really a viable thing. But that's like a different conversation about the whole of the self-help industry. But if you found meaning or help in 12 Rules for Life, that's completely fine. Like, don't get me wrong, it can definitely be a thing that help you, you know, with depression or other types of stuff. I'm not going to take that away from you. I'm just saying the philosophy and values behind it are the thing that you should not listen to, because it is heavily coded in his politics and beliefs. I have a great little Twitter thread with clips. I want to thank Zay Squirrel, who is a very prominent Twitter leftist. She posts a lot of stuff, so thank you, Zay Squirrel. We're going to be using her thread to go through some clips. Content warning, there is going to be sexism. Heavy sexism in this. Jordan Peterson has been very sexist in the past. So, content warning.
For years, I had this thing going where people would say, oh, and this is kind of what we're getting at from a different angle. I would say they would be afraid of what we would lose if we lost religion. And I basically said, demonstrate to me any benefit.
Oh, you'd lose art and poetry and drama and narrative and
Why?
story.
Are there no godless artists and poets?
Well, there are artists and poets who think they're godless.
For years.
So here, Jordan Peterson is saying that if we didn't have religion, we wouldn't have art, essentially, which is a weird statement. And the ending really does show Jordan Peterson's mentality. I don't know who the person who he's talking with is, but he says, like, are you saying that there are no artists that are godless or that don't believe in religion? Which there are very, very many. To which Jordan Peterson replies, they think they are godless, which implies that Jordan Peterson knows better. He knows better. He is the wise father, I guess, in this situation, where he knows that these artists are actually religious. They just don't know it. But he knows because he knows better, which is a very dangerous place to come from. It's a very arrogant and infantilizing way of looking at others, you know? But for someone to say, actually, you're doing it because of God, and I know that, but you just don't know, is really patronizing, you know? They're basically saying you're too stupid to understand where the source of your inspiration comes from. I, on the other hand, am so smart that I can see it. But you just don't know. You're just too dumb to know. It's really, really patronizing. And I don't like that style.
No way of confirming that this something mystical or supernatural actually happened. What this is about the language.
Stops people from smoking.
Well, you can stop smoking without any sort of supernatural intervention.
No, not really.
You can't stop smoking without supernatural?
There aren't really any reliable chemical means for inducing smoking cessation.
We have no way.
What? Yeah, you can't stop addiction without God because there's no chemical way of inducing the addiction. There's nicotine gum, there's nicotine patches, which do serve the chemical addiction. Like, what he's saying is not true. Do some people get out of addictions because of religion? Certainly. Absolutely. But that doesn't mean that religion is the only way to get out of addiction. Like, that's a ridiculous claim. The nicotine spray, nicotine candy, nicotine vapor, nicotine gum, nicotine patches. Like, his claim is just nonsensical, once again. Okay, let's continue.
This is from China.
Ooh, that's a little loud, sorry.
So this is Fuxi and Nuwa. I think I've got that right. But I just love that representation. It's so insanely cool, this representation. So you see the sort of the primary mother and father of humanity emerging from this underlying snake-like entity with its tails tangled together. I think that's I really do believe this, although it's very complicated to explain why. I really believe that's a representation of DNA. So, and that representation, that entwined double helix, that is everywhere. You can see it in Australian Aboriginal art, and I'm using the Australians as an example because they were isolated in Australia for like 50,000 years. They're the most archaic people that were ever discovered, and they have clear representations of these double helix structures.
Archaic people. Careful with that language. Very careful with that language.
In their art. So, and those are the two giant serpents out of which the world is made, roughly speaking. It's the same thing, you see that in the staff of Asclepius, which is the healing symbol that physicians use, although usually that's only one snake, but sometimes it's two. So
it's exactly like this example I gave, which actually it isn't, because most of the time it's not a helix because it's just one. Never mind.
So that's a Chinese representation, and then there's this. That's the Egyptian representation. We talked about the Egyptian story the other day, right? We talked about Isis and Osiris. So there they are, cobras. Their tails are twined together. See, they emerge out of that. That's the dragon of chaos that manifests itself as culture and nature. That's the
dragon of chaos!
Representation. That's unbelievably cool. So,
well, the dragon of chaos. Yes, the dragon of chaos. I mean, look, this is like really not anthropological. Like, again, I have to remind you that Jordan Peterson is not an anthropologist, nor is he a biologist. He's a clinical psychologist. And he's talking about stuff that he doesn't understand, or he's talking out of his ass, so to speak, because this is not his area of expertise. There are similarities in creation myths around the world. That is very true. Does that prove that there is some kind of order versus chaos thing? No, not really, no. It just shows how people interpreted the world around them. Now we get to one of his most famous bits, which is that there is hierarchies in lobsters, therefore hierarchies in people are it's okay, because nature also has hierarchies, like in the lobsters, and we're from nature, so it's fine.
Properties of the social behavior of lobsters and people are the same. This is a sign that he is a loon.
And I use the lobster as an example.
So this person is an actual evolutionary biologist who said that.
Because the lobster, we divulged from lobsters in evolutionary history about 350 million years ago, common ancestor.
No, that is ridiculous. 350 million years ago puts us in the early Carboniferous. Does he think lobsters evolved from sharks or sarcopterygians? There were diverse forms of both chordates and arthropods in the Carboniferous. The last common ancestor had to have long preceded this period. And it did. The best estimate of the last common ancestor was that it lived deep in the Cryogenian, long before the Ediacaran, about 700 million years ago.
Yeah, like, that being is so different to what we are now and what lobsters are now, to make that claim that because 700 million years ago, the lobsters and humans shared an ancestry, that their behaviors now must be because of that shared ancestry. And therefore, one behavior means that that behavior should exist in the other, which is a completely ridiculous take. It doesn't make any sense.
Now, you might argue that this is just a pedantic detail, but this is coming from a guy who is an academic, who claims the facts matter, is trying to use evolution to prop up his theories. Do they or don't they? This is an egregious error. You can't argue for evidence from evolution if you're going to be that wrong.
Yep.
There's also a deeper logical error. He's describing two extant species, lobsters and humans, and claiming that a behavioral property of lobsters was present in our last common ancestor and therefore is also present in us. That makes no sense. It's like claiming that I have a mustache, and therefore my great-grandfather had to have had a mustache.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
Which means that my brother must also have a mustache.
Yep, that doesn't make any sense.
He has just picked a species that has a trait he wants to claim is universal, and extended it without good evidence. I can do the same thing. I'll pick a different arthropod, say bees. Then I'll point to a random vertebrate, say a bear. Then, because bees are social animals and live in hives, I declare that bears are also social animals that live in hives, make honey, and will sting you with their butts if you disturb the queen bear.
Yeah, see, it doesn't make any sense when you break it down. And Jordan Peterson presents himself as an intellectual and an academic that uses science and reason for his beliefs. That his beliefs are logical and sound. And we can see here that is not the case. He's just making shit up to support his worldview. And hey, he's free to have his worldview, but he tries to point it as a sort of objective logical truth, which it really isn't. Jordan Peterson actually believes the scientific explanation to why people have color vision is contained in the Bible story about the snake and the fruit. And the Taoist symbol for reality is truly a scientific one. Oh my God.
It's because your ancestors were fruit eaters. And so it says in Genesis that what gave human beings vision was the snake and the fruit. Well, guess what? That happens to be the case. And then with regards to the pseudoscientific stance, let's say, of religious belief, let's look at the Taoist symbol for reality. Okay? Black paisley, white paisley. The black paisley has a white dot in it, and the white paisley has a black dot in it. What does that stand for? It stands for chaos and order. And the reason it stands for chaos and order is because
the dragon of chaos will come and eat you all. The dragon of chaos, he's coming, and he will eat you all. Like, this is not science. This is like pseudoscientific garbage. Like, why we see color, I don't know what the reasoning for that is. Is there an evolutionary like reason why we developed the ability to see color? Maybe. I don't know that stuff. But to claim that the Bible shows it is ridiculous and is in no way scientific.
Actually what being is made out of. Now, you might think that the world is made out of the objects that you see in front of you. But I can tell you one thing, the colors you see aren't part of the world. Your perceptions, which are evolved, in some sense blind you to realities that transcend your perception. You know why you have color vision?
Again, there's this tinge of I know better than you. And like, you can talk about the subjectiveness of our, what we actually see, and that can be an interesting philosophical conversation. But for him to kind of try to tie this into science is like, what? The Taoist symbol is proof that everything is made of order and chaos? No, it's just a philosophical belief. It's not a scientific belief. And you can see like this, like he talks about things that are not his like expertise. He's a psychologist. But he's not talking about psychology here in any of these things much. Just in some, like, there's some psychological stuff in some of his stuff, but he talks about like anthropology, evolution, biology, philosophy. None of these are his expertise and what he studied. And we see this trend on right-wing pundits that they have studied something at a high level, but it's not what they're talking about.
Genesis very old book and very influential book.
True. I mean, yeah.
There's a strange sequence of events that befalls Adam and Eve, right? It's in 2 sentences. A snake gives them an apple, and that wakes them up. Well, there's a good book by a Southern California primatologist that was just published last year that suggests that the reason that humans have such great vision, way better than most animals except for raptors, birds, is because our visual systems were designed to detect predatory snakes. And the way she discovered that was by comparing the populations of predatory snakes around the world to the visual acuity of the primate groups that lived in those areas. And what she found was essentially a one-to-one correspondence. Our visual system, which is the ability to see and to be enlightened, let's say, because enlightenment, for example, is associated with vision, the snake gave that to us because we had to pay attention to predatory things that were after us for tens of millions of years. And fruit, that's interesting. We have color vision because we were fruit eaters. Our color vision is precisely evolved to detect ripe fruit. So that part of the story is right.
So he's drawing a Hi kids, welcome to Critical Thinking 101. Correlation does not mean causation. So just because we have a story written by people in the Middle Ages, Dark Ages, what have you, whenever the fuck the Bible was written, it doesn't matter. A few thousand years ago, we have some stories written by people from 2,000 years ago about how we can see fruit because snake, and then we also discovered that from our history that we need to discern colors because predators. It doesn't mean that these two things are connected in any way. Okay, let's see. This is from Joe Rogan. This is going to be good.
Well, you see this happening in universities where women outnumber men. So the men hypothetically have more sexual opportunity. But that isn't what happens. What happens is that a small minority of men have all the sexual opportunity. A fairly large minority of men don't. The women are unhappy because they can't find a committed relationship. It's bad for most of the men. And the men who have all the sexual opportunity get cynical.
But isn't this in some ways...
He's essentially talking... This is inceldom. So for those of you who don't know, incels are people who call themselves involuntarily celibate. That's what the abbreviation means. And it basically ascribes people who can't get a partner, and they blame society and women for it, rather than looking at themselves and how to better themselves. I wouldn't say that he's an incel, but he has definitely promoted those ideologies.
Against your whole idea of equality of outcome, because you're talking about equality of sexual outcome now. If these men, if you have a guy like a LeBron James that's a dominant basketball player that just kicks everyone's ass, this is a guy who's succeeded at the highest level, right? Well, there's going to be people like that sexually. There's going to be people that are better at finding mates, and this is what they enjoy.
It's actually what does happen.
But what is wrong with that?
Well, what's wrong with it is that it destabilizes society and it's bad for children.
Right, you said...
Hold on. That's a really big leap that he just took there. So men not being able to find partners leads to societal imbalance and unhappy kids. But where do the kids come from if they don't find partners? Well, I guess he means like one-off or like, casual sex, I guess.
Yeah, but what if they don't want to have children? But there's a lot of people that don't want to have children. There's a lot of people that choose to go their entire life without having...
When fucking Joe Rogan... When Joe Rogan is like, hold on, this doesn't make sense. You fucked up. Because Joe Rogan is like a self-ascribed, like he's a dude's dude bro. Like when he's like, hold on, this doesn't make sense, you fucked up.
Having children. There's men in their 30s. Some of my friends have vasectomies. They don't want children.
Yeah.
So why would that help in any way, these involuntary celibates?
Well, I think you tilt the society so that it serves the interests of, well, that's a good question.
That moment when he says, I think you tilt society so it serves...
This is Sam Cedar. He's a leftist commentator, fucking awesome dude.
Those who have less.
Oh no, I see.
To each their need, right? Or whatever it is.
To each from their ability, each according to their need. Oh shit!
Oh, that's a good question.
Fucked up again.
Damn it! I should have thought about this before I went on tour for months to espouse it.
Let me reset this.
Yup. Oops. Yeah, this notion that every man deserves a partner is a very patriarchal way of looking. It's a very entitled way of looking at that. Men are entitled to sex, and women are supposed to provide it for men, because if they don't, society collapses, children will be unhappy, etc., etc. It's a very, very patriarchal, entitled way of looking at it. And Jordan Peterson is absolutely wrong here. Like, some people are more attractive than others in that they work on themselves a lot, and also they have, and they are more conventionally attractive. That's the case. That is definitely the case. But for these incels, the problem is never themselves. They don't see that they themselves are the issue. Where rather than working on yourself and working on being a better person, you blame the others and saying they're supposed to give me sex. They're supposed to fall in love with me, and they don't, and it's their fault. Yeah, it's odd they never happened to mention women who have trouble finding partners. He did kind of mention it in the beginning, but yeah, it's mostly focused on the men, like, oh, woe is the man. So this is the peak of the rhetoric that he does. Like, it's super sexist, but he doesn't say the things. He implies so much. The world would go into chaos if women had autonomy of their own bodies. Exactly. The dragon of chaos will arise.
Here's a question. Can men and women work together in the workplace?
Yes, I do it.
How do you know?
Because I work with a lot of women.
Right. Well, it's been happening for, 40 years? And things are deteriorating very rapidly at the moment in terms of the relationships between...
Sorry, my brain's not big enough for these 1 billion IQ ideas. So he's saying because women have only been in the workplace for the last 50, 60 years, we can't say that women and men can work together, even though we probably worked together in a pre-capitalist society when we were hunter-gatherers. Right? Play it more, I will.
Between men and women.
Is
there sexual harassment in the workplace? Yes.
Yeah.
Should it stop? That'd be good. Will it? Well, not at the moment it won't, because we don't know what the rules are.
Do you think men and women...
This is typical, very typical victim blaming.
can work in the workplace together?
I don't know.
Without sexual harassment?
We'll see.
We'll see. How many years will it take for men and women working in the workplace together?
More than 40.
To get a sense.
We don't know what the rules are. Like, what? Here's a rule. How about no makeup in the workplace?
Why would that be a rule?
Why should you wear makeup in the workplace? Isn't that sexually provocative?
No.
It's not?
No.
Well, what is it then? What's the purpose of makeup?
Some people would like to just put on makeup.
Why?
So this is Jordan B. Peterson. Just ask a woman, dude. Just ask a woman why they wear makeup. Do women wear makeup to be attractive towards people? Sometimes yes. But women also wear makeup because they enjoy wearing makeup, because it's a form of expression. This is even not to talk about, the other genders that wear makeup. Men wear makeup sometimes, and people of other genders wear makeup. Why do they wear makeup? If we just let's fixate on women now, because that's his fucking thing. But just talk to women. This is peak incel. This is peak incel shit. Women only wear makeup because it is meant to sexually arouse men, which enforces this view that women exist solely to please men. And their existence outside is solely for the purpose of pleasing men. So what Jordan B. Peterson is essentially espousing is hyper conservative, Islam countries where women have to be covered because otherwise men will rape them. You know? I mean, is that what he wants? He wants women to be covered from toe to toe so that men won't rape them because men are just savage beasts.
I don't know why.
Why do you make your lips red? Because they turn red during sexual arousal. That's why. Why do you put rouge on your cheeks? Same reason.
I mean, look.
How about high heels?
What
are they for?
What about high heels?
What about them? They're there to exaggerate sexual attractiveness. That's what high heels do. Now, I'm not saying that people shouldn't use sexual displays in the workplace. I'm not saying that.
See
but
how
I am
he
saying
works?
that is what they're doing. And that is what they're doing.
Do you feel like a serious woman who does not want sexual harassment in the workplace, do you feel like if she wears makeup in the workplace that she is somewhat being critical?
Yeah.
Okay.
I do think that.
But this is like very typical victim blaming. You know, what was she wearing when she got raped or sexually harassed? You know, if she was wearing provocative things, then surely she should take the blame for it, which is no, she shouldn't. Men are creatures that are able to control what they do and to respect other people's bodily autonomy. What he is saying there is absolute bullshit. I mean, do our lips get red when in arousal? Yes, that's true. But to claim that women wear makeup or they wear high heels purely for men's sexual arousal, again, is this idea that women exist for men and solely for men, which is bullshit. And this is like typical his way of arguing. So very aggressively being like, why? It's this, which makes him seem very logical and very educated in the way that he says this stuff. And he says it in a way where I'm saying he's sexist because he says women deserve to get sexually harassed. Then someone could be like, no. He didn't say that. He's just pointing out these facts. See, he's pointing you in the direction, but he's not really saying it, so he can basically step back and say like, hey, sorry. This is good shit.
Favorite feminist. I don't think of things that way. I'm not a favorite of ideologues. Do I have a favorite admirable woman? Who would be my favorite admirable woman?
Just Rosa Parks. Just someone.
I'm sorry, I often have a difficult time bringing names to mind. The woman who established nursing as a profession in Britain.
Florence Nightingale.
Yes. Florence Nightingale. It's like, good for Florence.
She thought
good for
men were
Florence.
unsuited to nursing because she had gender stereotypes. Shouldn't we be telling her off?
Well, some men are unsuited to nursing and some are.
Like, he totally just made this up on the spot and he got fucking owned. Florence Nightingale is like, well, Florence Nightingale thought that men shouldn't be nurses because men are not suited for that. Do you think that? Well, some men is like, oh, dude, just. But that take. Okay, let's go back to the take itself. Like, I don't think of myself in ideology, which is like ridiculous because of course you have ideologies that guide you. But let's look at the whole like men. Like, I don't like to look at. So let's change the words a little bit. Who's your favorite civil rights activist? I don't like to think of in those terms. I don't like ideologues. If you were to ask who's my favorite black person, I could answer that. Who's the one? Obama. Like, it's kind of like his argument is nonsensical here. Like, because if like feminism has had an important impact in the way women have rights in the society, and him being like, I don't like ideologues, is like, what? So this is from Turning Point USA, which had an event. I believe that is Donald Trump Jr. That's Charlie Kirk. He's a far-right pundit as well, part of the... Oh yeah, it says there, Donald Trump Jr. Yep. So he's a far-right pundit, and I believe that is Jack... What's his name? Jack Posobiec, a Pizzagate duder. So that's cool.
I think it's partly also a consequence of the fact that we haven't adapted to the birth control pill yet. You know, it was a major technological revolution, the birth control pill. And
Sure.
It's only been 50 years. And we haven't figured out what it means for women to have control over the reproductive function, or what the consequences what the consequences of that should be socially. The leftist types, especially in the 60s, thought you could just blow sexual morality apart completely, because now people were free to do what they want. But that isn't working. There's a backlash against that on the left as well. It's partly.
I don't know what the backlash on the left that he's talking about is. But he's basically saying that we don't know what the effects of birth control pills are, and women, you know, having sex with who they want, so they shouldn't be allowed to do. Or he's implying that they shouldn't be allowed to do that. See, he's not saying that, but he's implying. So if I say he said that, then, you know, Jordan Peterson, I did not say that. I merely pointed to a fact. Here's the first clip. It's Jordan Peterson talking with Jim Jeffries. Yeah, so let's see. Let's watch him. Let's watch Jordan Peterson be very smart and very, very smart.
Making people bake a cake for a gay wedding.
Making them do it?
Yeah.
I don't think that's a very good idea.
But here's the argument. So should they be able to deny making a cake for a black couple if they don't like black people?
Allowed to? Probably. That doesn't mean it's right.
Okay, so then we had the civil rights movement, where they said black people, we had to serve them in your restaurants and stuff like that, and it did work, and it did make our society better, but would you argue that that still wasn't right?
No, that was right.
Jordan, my dude. So, see how, like, he's like, no, they should not be made to serve cake to gay people. And you're like, so should they do that to black people? I guess no. Well, we had the civil rights movement, and that made things better. It did. So that's good. Yes. Gay people?
Why is that different to now if you didn't want to make a cake for black people?
Maybe it's not. Maybe it's not different. Yeah. Maybe I was wrong about that.
Hey, there he goes.
People...
There he goes. He admitted he was wrong. Props to Jordan Peterson for admitting that he was wrong. That was the question that Jim Jeffries asked. And to which Peterson said, it's not like they should be allowed to do that, but it's not a good thing for them to do. To which Jim then says, well, we had the civil rights movement about the same thing for black people. And it made our society better because we decided that that is not a valid reason to deny service to someone because they're black. And he says, yeah, that's true. And then he's like, well, what about gay people? Is this not the same thing? And to which he said, I guess you're right. I guess I was wrong. That was basically that conversation. And that's like one of the hard things about parsing through anything that Jordan Peterson does. His rhetoric makes it really hard to pin down what he is saying. He makes statements that on the surface look like they're pointing in a direction. We'll see this later on. I have a very specific example of this. But it seems that they point in a certain direction and say, are you saying this? And then he can say, I'm not saying that. Why are you saying this thing? You're making it about this thing. And where he can disavow a lot of stuff on what he says, but what he says implies a lot of dangerous things. But because of that implication, he can say, no, I'm not saying that. And he uses a lot of academic language to make it seem smart. But it isn't. Okay, here Jordan Peterson is saying he opposes gay marriage because it is backed by cultural Marxist. This is an extremely dangerous term. This is why Jordan Peterson is so dangerous. Cultural Marxist is a Nazi dog whistle, an alt-right dog whistle. It comes from cultural Bolshevism, which the Nazis used to talk about the Jews. They called the Jews cultural Bolsheviks. And the reason that they need to be eradicated, essentially. One of the reasons. And that these cultural Bolshevists or cultural Marxists have infiltrated academia and other institutions of power and are actually controlling everything. That's very dangerous language for him to use.
Voted up 77 votes. Australia is holding a plebiscite on whether to legalize gay marriage. I'm against the yes campaign, but but only because it's backed by cultural Marxists. I'm curious to hear your views on gay marriage. Well, I would be against it too if it was backed by cultural Marxists, because it isn't clear to me that it will satisfy the ever-increasing, what would you call it, demand for an assault on traditional modes of being. So,
what is he like? And again here, he uses language where he can, if someone were to say he was calling people who are for gay marriage cultural Marxists, he could say, he said, no, I said, if in fact it is backed by cultural Marxists, it's bad. He could disavow it that way. His language is very slippery, you know? And I don't know how this assault on traditional modes of being is also very vague. What does that mean? Traditional modes of being? Like, you can still be who you are. Like, gay marriage doesn't take anything away from anyone. It just gives gay people the same rights as straight people. It doesn't take away anything from anyone. So that's a completely nonsensical argument.
Being gay and in a long-term relationship, we are considering kids. What are your thoughts about gay people raising children? I think the devil's in the details, to tell you the truth. If I was ever talking to any individuals about that, the question is, well, how would you raise them? I mean, you have problems, right? If you're both of the same sex, then you're going to have the problem of how to provide the proper model for, let's say you have a boy and a girl. We know this is indisputable, and this is something I've talked to Warren Farrell about. Kids in intact heterosexual families where the father is present do way better on multiple indices than kids who are part of single-parent families. Now, that doesn't mean that there are no single parents who do a good job.
See, he's making a false equivalence here. He's not answering the question, actually. The question was, is same-sex adoption okay? In this scenario, the person who was asking that I have a same-sex partner, is it okay that we adopt? Jordan Peterson doesn't answer that question. Jordan Peterson goes on to talk about single parenthood versus two-parent households. These are completely different things, but he makes it sound like the single-parent household is the same as same-sex couples. Yeah, exactly. And that's like assuming that like opposite-sex couples never have problems. Of course they do. And it's true. If a child has both parents present, it is usually it helps in their further life. That's true. That is very true. But he doesn't answer the same-sex question at all. He dodges that and starts talking about how single parenthood is bad.
Right? That's not the same bloody claim. Those are different claims. But on average, not only do kids where fathers are present do better, but societies, or even local societies, where there are more fathers present do better, not only for the kids that they're fathering, but
That's also a very, 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 very slippery language from our pal Jordan here. He's saying local communities where fathers are present. Notice that language. What local community in Northern America are communities where fathers are not present? Black communities have a big impact on this. And of course the question becomes, why aren't Black fathers present? And that's usually not the question that in this line of reasoning is asked. It's not usually asked why. It's because of systemic racism. Because Black people are incarcerated at a higher rate than white people for the same crimes. All these types of factors. But he doesn't talk about that. He just talks about, if both parents are there, then it's good, and we should have both parents there. But he still hasn't answered the question about same-sex marriage.
The kids in the neighborhood where there are lots of intact families with fathers do better. And so I believe quite firmly that the nuclear family is the smallest viable human unit. Father, mother, child. Smallest viable unit. And if you fragment it below that, then you end up paying.
Yeah, again, he is talking about most likely black neighborhoods in the US because a lot of black men are incarcerated in the US. So the question always becomes, okay, why are they incarcerated? It's not because of their culture or because they're like that. That's not why they're in jail. They're in jail because they get disproportionately put in jail. And again, he didn't answer the question. He dodged the question and started talking about a completely different topic. Do you see what he did here? Like, he's dodging and talking about something else. And because he's talking about the thing, he makes it sound like same-sex adoption is a bad thing because he starts talking about a father and a mother and all that stuff.
That's called a performative contradiction. It's like, well, I like to complain about left-wing issues on my iPhone.
Right. Exactly.
You know, it's like, well, yeah, fair enough, but you know, you should have a little gratitude for the fact that you've got your iPhone to complain about.
It's literally this. It's literally this. They're like, Apple AirPods cost $159, but they can't pay taxes or decent wages for their Chinese factory workers. Post, you said on an iPhone. Gotcha. Here, cars should have seat belts. Yet you bought one, hypocrite. Owned. We should improve society somewhat. Yet you participated in society. Curious. I am very intelligent. Like, this is the oldest fucking criticism of leftists in the book. If you enjoy any of the things that we have in our society, like phones or TVs or anything, if you use any products, anything, you're a hypocrite. You're a hypocrite. You should go off the grid, live off the land, which of course is not possible in our current system. It's virtually impossible to do. So if you're doing well under capitalism, you're a hypocrite for criticizing it because you participate in it. And if you are too poor to enjoy these things, you're just jealous. Is this the oldest fucking trick in the book? Just because you are part of something doesn't mean you cannot criticize that thing. That's a ridiculous statement to say that if you are part of something, you cannot criticize it because you're a hypocrite, because you're part of it. Like, no, that's a ridiculous argument. Jordan Peterson claims that real oppressed people in society aren't the poor marginalized workers. No, it's actually the managers and CEOs of corporations and the power and wealth they have. The more oppressed they are, according to him.
You're the manager, and you're a decent human being, and you've got 20 people who are dependent on you, and at least 2 of those people are real trouble. Like, they're serious trouble, and they're your concern all the time. And so you see this as people move up the corporate hierarchies, you think, well, they have more and more power. It's like,
they do.
Yeah, but not really. They have more and more.
Not really. Yes, they do. They literally do have more power when they move up the corporate ladder because they can decide someone's salary, they can decide who is hired, they can decide who is fired. That is literal power. He was like, well, they don't really have power. They have more responsibility, which is true. They do, in that sense that they hold more people's jobs in their hands and more people's salaries in their hands. It's true.
More responsibility, and their behavior is actually monitored with increasing severity. It's like you're quite constrained in most high-level positions of authority in complex organizations.
Yeah.
Like, you have to behave pretty damn carefully or you're going to get yourself in trouble very, very quickly.
Oh, yeah. Like, the top-level CEOs and C-execs, they really can't do anything in big companies, you know? Nothing. They really can't do anything. Otherwise, you know, they're in real trouble. Jordan Peterson, by the way, big free speech dude. Big free speech dude. That was his whole, like, the Bill C-16 thing. He railed against it because he was like, it's about free speech, yada, yada, yada. So here is our free speech warrior, Jordan B. Peterson.
So, but, you know, I think I told Pankaj Mishraj, I think that's his name, journalist, that if he was nearby, I read his article, that I'd happily slap him. And, you know, maybe that was true, and it remains true, by the way. And I thought about it before I hit send, but, and maybe that was an error, but perhaps it wasn't. So, I didn't like what he said, and I think that if he had been on the right-hand side of the political spectrum, he would have been taken down and out because of what he said, that I was romancing the noble savage. It's like, really? Really? He had no idea the relationship that he was talking about.
So here is Jordan B. Peterson, big free speech dude, saying, if you write meanie-bo-beanie things about me that I don't like, that hurt my fifis, I will slap you. And if you were on the right, we wouldn't allow you to write such things. Remember, free speech advocate. Big on free speech. Really big on free speech.
Nor did he care, but I do truly believe that had he been a conservative commentator, he would have been summarily dismissed from his position for daring to make such an accusation.
Yeah, how dare he? How dare he criticize Jordan Peterson, the God King? How dare he? Also, free speech is very important, which is why I will not, I will misgender people if I so please. Thank you very much.
So I think the idea that I would have happily slapped him was kind of minor in comparison. So, you know, I have some bit of a temper, and maybe I don't always control it as well as I could, but it's hard to tell how much of it to keep under wraps and how much to let out, and keeping all of it under wraps is the wrong amount.
Yeah, big free speech dude. Big on free speech, this Jordan B. Peterson. I think this shows how Jordan Peterson masks his sexism, his Christian beliefs, and his pseudoscience and nonsense into this veneer of intellectualism and academic language to make him seem smart. And he talks in very vague and slippery terms where he points in dangerous directions, but he doesn't actually say those things. So he can disavow and say, I did not say that. That was not what I was saying. You are taking me out of context. And then you are being unreasonable, and then make the other person look really unreasonable and win those arguments. So I hope this helps you understand why Jordan Peterson is really wrong about basically everything. Like, he is just flat out wrong, and he's just trying to sell you a book. He's not there to help you. Whether his intentions are there or not, I don't know, and I don't really care. It doesn't really matter. The end result is that he enforces a sexist view of the world where Christian values are the best, and he knows what's best for you. And I don't think he knows what's best for you. You know? And I'm not saying I know what's best for you either. Thanks for watching this video, hey? If you liked it, please do like and leave a comment down there and subscribe. I would very, very much appreciate that. It would help me out a lot. And I also stream on Twitch every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 6 p.m. Central European time. I would gladly answer your questions, so hop on over to Twitch. Link also down there. And thank you so much, and I hope you have a great one. See ya. Psst, hey kid, wanna buy some meaning?